Welcome to my presentation about the Nez Perce Indians, or the Nimi Ipu. The Nez Perce called themselves Nimi Ipu, which means the people. The name Nez Perce, which means pierced nose, came from French-Canadian fur traders in the 1700s. However, the Nez Perce never practiced nose piercing. The Nez Perce Indians are a tribe that lived in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. At the time of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Nez Perce territory covered about 17 million acres, covering parts of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And as you see in the two maps here, it's a little bit further out, so you can see Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and that's where their original tribal lands were. Same thing in this picture here, although it's a little bit blurrier. Although the Nez Perce Indians were known as warriors and were strategic in battle, the Lewis and Clark expedition recorded them as a helpful tribe that was very peaceful. The Nimi Ipu, the Nez Perce, some places where I read they call them nomadic, others didn't. They did move around. Within the deep canyons of the traditional land, the people relied on rivers, mountains, and prairies for sustenance. They practiced a seasonal subsistence cycle, living with the seasons, not by the month. So in early spring, women traveled to the lower valleys to dig root crops. The men traveled to the Snake and Columbia rivers to intercept the early salmon runs. The men still hunted, but much less during the salmon runs. In midsummer, all the people of the village moved to higher mountainous areas, setting up temporary camps to gather later root crops, fish the streams, and do more hunting of the big game. By late fall, the people settled back into their traditional villages along the Snake, Clearwater, and Salmon rivers. Salmon and other fish, game, dried roots, and berries provided winter foods for storage. However, hunting parties would travel to the hills and river bottoms where the deer and elk wintered. So you can see they did move around. It wasn't random. They usually went to the same place, came back to the same camps. So again, some people call them nomadic. Others didn't consider them to be nomadic because they kind of stayed in the same places. They didn't just travel randomly. The Nimi Ipu lived in groups of extended families in small villages along streams and rivers. The principal Nimi Ipu house was the tule mat covered longhouse, and here's a kind of a picture of that. The length varied but could be over 100 feet long. These dwellings were used for ceremonial purposes and for winter housing by several families. There were several rows of hearths, fireplaces, in the center of the structure, used by several families. At times, semi-subterranean dormitories were used in conjunction with the longhouse to accommodate single men and women. House pits or excavated dwellings were also used by families simultaneously with the mat-covered longhouse structures. These structures became less possible after the introduction of the teepee. And here's an example of the teepee right here. The teepee is made using 12 wood poles with tule mat covers, which were eventually replaced by bison skins during the late 18th century, in the 1700s. After the introduction of trade, canvas covers replaced the bison skin and tule mats. Historically, a few semi-subterranean plank and log homes were found among the Nimi Ipu. The famous leader of the Nez Perce Nation, Chief Joseph, and here's a picture of Chief Joseph right here. He surrendered to the United States Army after the tribe had fought 13 battles and moved 1,600 miles toward Canada in an attempt to retreat north. The last battle, the Battle of Bear Paw Mountains, was the last great fight between a nation of Native Americans and the United States government. It was there that Chief Joseph gave his famous statement, "From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever." Many people say he died of a broken heart after living on a reservation for 2 decades. So there's my presentation about the Nez Perce Indians. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a few new facts.